Somewhere in the hills of northeastern Romania, there is an empty room in a wooden building with a metal roof. The floorboards still creak in the same place they always did. Nobody sleeps in that room anymore. In June 2005, a 23-year-old woman died in that room, bound, gagged, alone in the dark for 3 days straight. The people who did it to her prayed over her the entire time. Her name was Maricica Irina Cornici, and by every account, even the ones who believed she was possessed, she was gentle, quiet, the kind of person nobody thought could be hiding something dark inside her. Her father died by suicide when she was a child. Her mother abandoned her not long after. She grew up in a state orphanage in the ruins of a country still recovering from decades of communist rule. Overcrowded, underfed, unwatched. By 23, she thought she'd finally found somewhere safe. A childhood friend, now a nun, invited her to a small monastery called Tanacu. She decided to stay. Before the monastery, she'd spent time working abroad as a nanny in Germany, earning wages she planned to hand over to the church community she hoped to join. Friends from those years describe her the same way, again and again. Shy, hardworking, no history of illness. Nobody who knew her before Tanacu remembers anything that looked like what came later. Something followed her there, or something was already waiting. It started with laughter, the wrong kind, sudden, uncontrollable, in the middle of Mass, when everyone around her was silent. Within weeks, it had gotten worse. Doctors diagnosed her with schizophrenia. 2 weeks of treatment. Then she was released, back into the care of the one place that believed medicine wasn't the answer. The hospital records exist. They're part of the official case file. A licensed psychiatrist examined her, prescribed medication, and documented her condition in clinical, unremarkable language. The kind of paperwork filed on thousands of patients every year. None of it made it back to Tanacu with her. Or if it did, nobody there believed it mattered more than what they thought they could see with their own eyes. She was supposed to return for a follow-up in 10 days. She never left the monastery again. The priest who ran Tanacu was a 29-year-old monk named Daniel Corojanu. He didn't see a sick woman in front of him. He was convinced completely that what he was looking at wasn't illness at all, that something was living inside her, and that he could see it in her eyes whenever he looked. When she grew violent, when she refused the holy water they pressed to her lips, he didn't see a woman in crisis. He saw confirmation. So the nuns built something to hold her still. Rough wooden boards, crude arm supports nailed on as an afterthought. Nobody who built it called it a cross. Everyone who saw it afterward did. For 3 days she didn't move from that stretcher, gagged, in a cold room with one small window. No food, no water she was willing to accept. The nuns who stayed with her prayed in shifts. Read later, their own testimony is almost unbearable in how ordinary it sounds. Like people describing a long night shift, not 3 days spent watching a woman slowly die in front of them. They believed, right up until the end, that what they were witnessing was a battle being won, not a body failing. Nobody outside that room could hear what was, or wasn't, happening inside it. By the time anyone realized how wrong things had gone, she had already stopped breathing. Paramedics gave her adrenaline. It didn't matter. Her pulse was already gone. As they lowered her into the ground, witnesses said thunder rolled across the valley at that exact moment. Standing over her grave, the priest said simply that God's will had been done. He believed that completely. Romanian prosecutors did not. Corogianu was sentenced to 7 years. 4 nuns received sentences of 5 and 6. The church closed the monastery for good and stripped him of his priesthood. But go to Tanacu today, and you'll find people who still don't believe any of it was wrong. Her own brother testified, under oath, that he had watched something enter his sister with his own eyes, that he saw it happen, that nobody believed him and he no longer cared, because he was the one who had been there. Whatever you believe was inside that room with her, sickness, neglect, or something else entirely. One detail from the case file has never sat easy with anyone who's read it. More than once in her final hours, she asked, quietly, according to those who were there, simply to be let go. In the fall of 1981, 12 people sat in a jury box in Danbury, Connecticut, and were asked to decide something no American jury had ever been asked before. Not whether a man killed another man. He'd already admitted that. They were asked to decide whether something else was in the room when it happened. It began, as these things always seem to, with a child. David Glatzel was 11 years old. According to his family, not long after they moved into a new rental home in Brookfield, he began waking up with scratches he couldn't explain. He growled in voices that weren't his. He recited scripture he'd never been taught, in a home that wasn't especially religious. Years later, David would describe what he saw as looking like the devil from a Halloween costume. Its eyes solid black, terrifying to a child who had no framework for what was happening to him. His family said invisible hands closed around his throat at night. In the morning, there would be red marks on his neck. Nobody in the house could explain where they came from. By the family's account, it didn't stay confined to nighttime for long. Furniture shifted position when no one was near it. A rocking chair moved on its own. David's older siblings took turns staying awake with him in shifts, the way you'd watch over someone critically ill, because by then, none of them were sure what else to call it. Their parents tried doctors first. Physical exams found nothing wrong with him. A pediatrician had no explanation for the marks on his throat. That's usually where a story like this would end. It's not where this one did. Desperate, the Glatzels called in paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, already infamous from another haunting that had made international headlines. Lorraine said that the moment she walked into that house, she saw something standing beside the boy. Not a shadow. A shape. Dark. Watching. Over the following months, clergy performed 3 lesser exorcism rites on David. The family says he convulsed through the night, that he stopped breathing more than once for long enough to terrify everyone in the room, that he lifted, briefly, off the bed. David's older sister Debbie had a boyfriend, 19 years old, Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. He'd moved into the house to help protect the family. During one of the rites, as David thrashed and screamed, witnesses say Johnson did something that would define the rest of his life. He shouted at whatever was tormenting the boy to leave him alone, to take him instead, to come into him if it wanted someone. The Warrens say they told him not to. that there are rules to this that you don't break. He said it anyway. In the weeks that followed, the family says Johnson began to change. Trances, growling. Mornings where he had no memory of the night before. He told them a demon had seized control of his car during a crash on an empty road, and that he walked away from the wreck without a scratch on him. Lorraine Warren would later say she warned the family this was exactly the danger of what Johnson had done. That whatever they believed had been tormenting David didn't simply vanish when someone volunteered to take its place. It moved. And once it had somewhere new to go, it stayed there, waiting for the right moment. Nobody in that house, by their own account, believed the right moment was still weeks away. He visited a well near the property afterward, the one the family believed the entity called home. By his own account, that was the last clear memory he had before everything that came next. On an ordinary Monday afternoon, Johnson was at the kennel where Debbie worked. Her boss, their landlord, a man named Alan Bono, had been drinking with them. An argument started. Nobody agrees exactly how. By the end of it, Bono had been stabbed, repeatedly. He would die of his wounds. It was the first homicide in that quiet town's entire 200-year history. The next day, Lorraine Warren walked into the police station and told them, plainly, that Johnson had been possessed the moment it happened. Johnson's attorney tried something no lawyer in American history had tried before him: a formal plea of not guilty by reason of demonic possession. He wanted exorcism specialists flown in from Europe to testify under oath. The judge said no, ruling flatly that the court had no framework to weigh a defense like that, and that it simply would not be heard. 15 hours, 3 days of deliberation. On November 24th, 1981, the jury convicted Arnie Cheyenne Johnson of manslaughter, 10 to 20 years. He served 5. He married Debbie Glatzel while he was still behind bars. They stayed together until her death in 2021. Years later, David's own brother came forward and called the entire possession story a lie. One invented, he said, to sell books and lecture tickets off a sick child suffering. Johnson and Debbie always denied it. David himself has only ever said this. He doesn't know, even now, what really happened to him as a boy. Only that it felt real, and that people built careers out of it long after anyone stopped asking whether he was all right. To this day, it remains the only case in American legal history where a court was formally asked a single question and refused to answer it. Was this a man who committed murder? Or was something else in the room with him when he did?